Department of Economic and Community Development. This is Veronica Fields. She's the grant administrator. And today we just want to actually kind of go over the process. You'll probably notice that there are no numbers in the fiscal year 22 proposed numbers. HUD has been in contact with us. We don't know exactly what we will receive this year. I did get an email from our HUD CPD rep today. She says they're probably out 2 to 3 months before we will receive anything, but our office still does have to go through the process, which is having, doing the applications, doing the presentations, meeting with City Council, having 2 public hearing dates, and publishing our proposed numbers in the newspaper. And we're actually probably going to delay the publication of the ad. Originally, we were going to do it on March 16th. We're looking at now March 28th, only in hopes of maybe it'll be sooner than the 2 months. So actually what you have here is a list of the proposed requests for 2022. I've also included prior years when we had requests as well as allocations, so you can kind of look at those numbers and see exactly what they are. I also did do a project description that kind of gives you a description of what these projects are. So for those who don't know what Community Development Block Grant is, the City of Erie is actually an entitlement agency where we receive funding from Housing and Urban Development. Our funding is based on population as well as census and poverty and things like that. So this year we may have a decrease in funding based on the 2020 census data. And so that is another reason why we don't want to advertise, you know, I guess I'd say quickly, because based on whatever we advertise, we probably have to do the ad over. And the advertisements for the newspaper are very expensive. And then we also don't want agencies, if we put a number down, and then we have to decrease that number. And so all of that information will be, I guess, we'll tell everyone at our first public hearing, which is on Monday, March 7th. We have 2, one is at 10 a.m. and one is at 6 p.m. It will be in City Council, Zoom, YouTube, and live streaming. So we're trying to make it available to the public as much as possible as we can. So if you look at this sheet right here, which has proposed numbers for 2022, what we've been told by our CPD rep is that when we do go to advertise what our proposed allocations are, we'll use what we have from last year, and we'll base our project descriptions or the projects that we will fund based off of that allocation. As I mentioned, just keep in mind that with proposed numbers, if those numbers, you know, go down, then we'll have to adjust projects accordingly. So last year we had an allocation of $3,164,753, and we normally put program income in of $5,000. Right now we estimate that we have $215,514.53 of reprogramming dollars, and the reprogramming dollars are dollars from projects or activities that we funded that did not expend all of the funding. Maybe the project did not go through. Our projects are from July 1 through June 30th, and so if you have not expended your dollars by then, we reallocate those programs for the next year. Are there any questions on the allocation?
What sticks out for me is Parks and Recreation. We just flatlined at $25,000 every year.
For, I'm sorry, which?
Parks.
All right, so that is, okay, so the first line, which is City of Erie, and as I mentioned, these are requests from the various departments, and so this is what they requested. We have not proposed any allocation, but that's what they actually kind of proposed each year. So number the numbers on the fiscal year, proposed numbers that we would normally allocate are listed. We just have what applications that we received when our application process went out. So all of these numbers are what agencies are requesting.
I wanted to know, like, how do you decide how much to give? Like, you said that this is what they're requesting, and then you go through and you decide, you know?
So normally when we meet with City Council, we would have some proposed numbers that we would come and say, oh, this is what we think we should give to these agencies. But because we have not received our allocation number, we don't want to put those down yet. Okay. And so we are also postponing the date when we'll put it in the newspaper. Our plan has to go to HUD by May 13th, I believe. So if we put the ad in the newspaper on March 28th, another public hearing is scheduled for April 5th at 10 and 6 p.m. April 28th would be 30 days. It has to be posted in the newspaper for 30 days. And then we would come to City Council. I believe the date is at May 2nd. Do you have that?
And then can you just explain how the agencies or the groups requesting funding have done their presentations to all who was there? So.
All right, so on May, I think it's May 13th. I think it's May 13th, we'll come to City Council asking to submit our plan. And HUD has 45 days to submit it. I'll go back and I'll go what the process is for CDBG, home, and ESG. So in December 1st through January of 28th this year, January 28th, 2022 of this year, we took applications. Applications went out to agencies who may have been on our CDBG list before, or applicants who had we received funding before, or if people called us and said they wanted an application, we sent out applications. The application stuff was actually posted on the city's website, so if anyone went to the website, they could see that we were in the process of taking applications. For, I think it was February 7th through February 7th through February 11th, there were presentations. There were 3 days of presentations. Councilwoman Liz did attend, I think, the first day. Then we had it on Wednesday and I believe Friday. And so applicants, they come in and they do a presentation on their application. They tell us what their program is. They tell us who it's going to benefit, what the accomplishments may be. And we take notes, we write down different things. Questions are asked. Some applicants or agencies, we may have to follow up with them further for further information. So we did 3 days of that, and I think this year, we actually got maybe 54 applications, and some of them may have been from one agency who may have submitted 2 applications. So that's how the presentations were.
I think one of the things you had to emphasize or tell some of the applicants is that this is a certain population that is supposed to be served by CDBG. So I heard you ask questions and explain that, because not everybody knew.
And so with CDBG funds, our funding has to benefit at least 70% of low-mod income persons. I believe last year, based on what our percentage was, I believe we were at like 91. It's not going to show on there from the current year that we're in right now. It was actually 92% of the activities that we funded benefited low-mod income individuals. And some of the activities that we fund, it could be public facilities improvements. That could be like renovations to like the community centers and different things like that. We had playground improvements, street improvements, which included handicap curb cuts. And the city, there is a consent decree for that where we have to actually fund those projects based on the city being, I guess, sued some years ago. So we have to fund handicap curb cuts. There is also street reconstruction where paving and different things are done in certain areas of the city of Erie. Tree removal and replacement, that is removal of trees and planting of new trees. Then we also have the downtown streetscapes, which is that Perry Square projects, which will include lighting, sidewalks, different things like that. And so that is actually a match that we are doing with that project. Public services are with the community centers and different agencies like that where they have summer rec programs, after-school programs. Could be workforce development, Youth Leadership Institute, GCAC does some in-home services, the Police Athletic League, the YMCA. So all of those are public services. And with our public service activities, there is a cap for that. Normal HUD agencies receive CDBG funding can only actually allocate 15%. The city was actually grandfathered in. At one point in time, we were doing 22.6%, but after an OIG audit, we found out that we could only permitted to take 20.6% of what our allocation is, or we could use $778,960. So each year, we look at using that $778,960 because actually the percentage would be lower. We also do housing programs with, like the Redevelopment Authority does a housing rehabilitation program that they go into houses in the city of Erie, actually in within the city of Erie. If you're income eligible, you're eligible to receive up to $24,999. But you have to also take into account if your house has more work than that $24,999, then we cannot assist with that. There is also, the Redevelopment Authority has a lead hazard grant, and we provide match for that, and that's $75,000. I think it's for a total of 4 years. Then we also do some special economic development activities, depending on what they are. Job creation is involved. We also have a facade program. And then there's housing services where the Redevelopment Authority provides services to us as far as scope of work for our housing rehabilitation owner-occupied program and our first-time homebuyer program, where they go in and they'll do the scope for us. They'll do walk through and see if the project is a viable project. They do the inspections, they do the follow-up, they do all that stuff. So we pay them to do that. For our home program, we have a first-time home buyer program where you can receive up to $24,999. It can be for down payment and closing costs, and also rehabilitation to make sure your house is brought up to code. And that is for anyone who is eligible in the city of Erie. You have to meet the income qualifications. You can pick a house almost anywhere in the city of Erie. So that's what that program's about.
Yeah, I tried to go through it, I just didn't know exact numbers on it, so I was curious. That's pretty neat.
It is. It's coming along pretty well, so.
And they check to see like what kind of maintenance is needed on how, like what, if there's repairs needed, that's part of it, or you listed off the home price, the cost, or the closing costs, down payment, and then necessary repairs. So is that like part of the scope separate inspector?
It's kind of separate as far as like the down payment closing costs. And Veronica administers that program, in which she looks at, we actually look at what the need of the home buyer may be. If there's someone who is 80% of the median, has income that, you know, is 80%, maybe 70%, they're going to probably receive a little less than someone who might be at 50 or 65%. So it is kind of based on that. So you could get closing costs as well as maybe some down payment assistance, and then rehab to your house just to make sure it's brought up to code. That's the home program. With the program that the redevelopment authority does, they just do the homeowner rehab. But for home, we have homeowner rehab as well as first-time home buyer.
And just make sure if you ask a question, you have your microphone on. I did not have mine on the first time I asked a question, so, and that's why our cam friend came out to remind us to use our microphones. Deb, we might have like individual questions about the public service activities, and I'm thinking that one of the ones that might jump out is at the top, you know, JFK Summer, and maybe you could just explain how that program, that was actually driven by the director of JFK as to how they are approaching their programming.
Right.
So,
All right, so this year, normally JFK Summer Rec, they submit an application. This year, their executive director said that they were actually they're changing their program, and they're looking to do something that is year-round. And it probably will include summer, but what they're looking to do is something from July 1 through June 30th instead of doing a 6-week summer rec program. They want it to be continuous, where it would go from July through the whole year, pretty much. Yeah. So that's why they don't have any funding listed in that line item.
I would just, I would add, you kind of asked a question about how it's decided, like how much somebody would get. So on their application, they have to submit an itemized budget listing everything that they intend to spend the funding on. And Deb and her team, Deb is great at knowing what we're allowed to fund through HUD. So it's not like the city's saying, we're not going to buy you that couch. There are certain things that we can't buy. And then there are certain things that, you know, if we were to fund things like furniture and equipment and that kind of stuff, and then somehow the project or the initiative was deemed not appropriate, we would have to go and get all that stuff back, which would be a nightmare for our staff. So we ask people to be patient because there are a lot of rules and regulations and then reporting and monitoring requirements. So they have to go out then and monitor everybody who gets funding to make sure that it's being spent appropriately, and if it's not, it has to be paid back. So Deb can go into a lot more detail than I can on that, but.
Right.
Madam President, may I ask, what is the qualifying income for folks to apply for that? 25,000
For
to the first-time buyer.
Oh, do you have our income? For a family of one, I think it's 38,000.
For a family of one is 38,100 gross. Two is probably like 43. I'm sorry?
Family of one is one child?
That's just one person.
Just one person?
Mm-hmm.
And we can actually, if you want, we can actually send you the chart that shows like everything from one person to, I think it goes up to 7 or 8.
Yeah, and HUD, honestly, this past year, the HUD limits actually changed quite drastically. So it hit us big time. We don't know what the reason was, but they actually went down compared to the year before. So it's made it a little bit of a challenge, but we still remain busy.
Sure. We have to be careful. We give a lot of people upside down up there on 23rd and 24th Street. They bought houses that they thought were valued at such and such, and then when they try to get an equity loan, they couldn't prove that kind of value for those houses. That's why I ask.
I think a lot of those houses that you're referring to were new constructions.
Right.
We don't do new construction with our home investment partnership program. And individuals, like I said, can almost choose any house in the city of Erie.
Thank you.
In reference to what Renee was speaking on, all of the projects that we fund, we do monitor those on an annual basis. For CDBG, someone in our department goes out before the program year ends just to ensure that they are using the funds as they were supposed to be used for. And if an agency requires technical assistance, we are there to provide technical assistance to anyone who may need it. For home programs, those are also monitored. If it's a rental new construction, we have to monitor those for 20 years. That same project. If it is a home buyer project, we do put a lien on the property, and as long as the home buyer stays in that property, it could be 5, 10, or 15 years, that lien is forgiven after that term. All right, so do you want to go through the different projects, or are there questions on, I guess, any?
I have a question. So, but could the new, theoretically, the homes program could be used for new construction if it was the first time?
Only for if you are a developer or a nonprofit who has, you have to have some expertise in housing too. We have a non-community housing development list that agencies would have to fill out. It is actually it's not for individuals. We couldn't give you money to go out and buy a house. You'd have to be a developer or a nonprofit or CHODO, which we have. HANDS is one of our CHODOs, which is a community housing development organization.
Okay.
When you're looking at one of these programs, like the Downtown Y Teen Center, for example, y'all like proposed 50,000. What does that all include? Like when you talk about the 50,000, when they present it to you, what do they?
If you look at some of these, the numbers, if it says human resources, it will include like salaries. But the salaries have to be direct service. It has to be like people who are actually working with those, teens at the Y,
right,
and who are, actually working with them.
Okay.
Is there a evaluation process at the Reentry Program that you have to see if in fact it has made an impact or successful in what they're doing?
So for all of our applications that we have for Community Development Block Grant, you have to actually say, like, you're going to serve 200 people or 100 people. And so when each month, I'll say, there's a direct benefit record that is submitted to our office, and what that shows is the number of people that you served, with their race, nationality, different things are like that. And so when the team, I'll say, goes out to monitor, they'll be able to tell if you're meeting that goal or not. And so, the funding's already expended, but if that same agency comes back to us next year, we'll say, we may say we're not going to give you what you asked for before because you did not fulfill what you said you were going to fulfill when you filled out your application.
Do we have the staff to drop in at any point in time? Because you can send me all the numbers in the world, but I want to drop in unannounced to see.
Of course. I don't think that the agencies that we give funding to would have a problem with that. They probably, welcome it. Come and see exactly what they're doing, because they have actually invited our office to, come out and see what they're doing as far as their programs and different things like that. So I don't think that's a problem to just drop in, just say, hey, I just came to see, see your after-school program or your summer rec program. We've actually been invited to a lot of, different events like that. So I don't think that's a problem.
Is it okay with you if any one of us drop in and let you know what we've seen and what we did?
Sure. We'd like to hear from you. right, so I don't know if you want me to go through each individual one. As I mentioned before, I did do a short narrative or a short description of what the application said.
Yeah, I have a question, and first, and an apology, because I was unable to make the pitch sessions. But I would like to know more about is the Erie Refocused Citizens Response.
All right, so that is actually a City of Erie Citizens Respond. Marcela actually oversees that. And what it is, if you look at this sheet under public service, so that is actually anyone in the City of Erie who may call in. They may have a complaint, they may have a general question, they may want to compliment, you on what you're doing, maybe your garbage didn't get picked up. He
Right.
actually answers all of those requests.
Right, I'm aware of the office and what it does. I just was unaware that it was subsidized by the CBG, and so.
So we can use admin dollars to pay part of his salary instead of taking it out of the general fund. So that's what we're doing there.
Okay.
This whole first section here is all City of Erie requests that are on the first page, and then the applications, the actual applications from community organizations start on page 2.
And that's the problem, maybe put that under City of Erie
Yeah.
projects, and I did.
That's okay.
So we do have a good short narrative here about all of them.
It's a short narrative. I just thought that would be helpful.
It is very helpful.
So these interviews, these were the ones that happened like last week.
A couple of weeks ago,
Couple
yeah.
of weeks ago. Maybe we could, so I asked the question about the JFK program because I knew what the answer was for that, but what about, maybe we could look at some of the ones where there's no money, where they had received money in the past, or maybe some new allocations, like for, I think, is it Multicultural Resource Center that,
All right, so Multicultural Research Center, they didn't submit an application
Okay.
this year, and I'm not sure why they did not.
Okay, that
I
answers
just
that
put a
question.
0 there.
And are there any on here that anybody else sees where, well, there's some new things on here. Let's see.
I think we got 54, but 2 maybe from like some of the agencies, but I think it was like 54 applications that we got this year.
And then, for example, how about Erie Downtown Improvement District, which,
Actually, I received, before I got down here, they asked me to withdraw their application.
okay. I think they're going in sort of a different direction because that was, I mean, they still want to accomplish what they want to accomplish, but I think they're going a different route, maybe. I got the impression from
Yeah,
Emily.
they've applied for ARP funding now for that. That's to add ambassadors to their safety and hospitality program. And, Deb, that's one where Deb had kind of explained, like, we need to be able to show HUD that you're serving low to mod income folks. And there was really no way to show that with that program. It's a good program, but to fund it with CDBG funding probably wasn't going to be possible. So they applied for ARP funding.
Will that go back into the pot then for maybe a group that didn't make the cut, the amount that was was listed on here? Well, I think it's
Right. Well, yeah, we didn't, like Deb said,
Well,
we haven't actually.
Right, actually, right now, based on this sheet right here, we have $1,026,513.19 of requests for public service. And the maximum amount that we can put in our public service line is $778,960. So
okay.
based on these requests right here, we don't have enough money.
You don't, okay. Then how about the Reentry Program?
All right, so that is actually GCAC's Reentry Program that is funded through, the state, I believe. And so the amount that they're requesting is actually probably gap funding
Okay,
to assist
so
with
it's
some-
not like a cut, because because I
No.
know that that's
No,
pretty
they're-
important.
Programs funded federally.
So this is about 40% of the applicants were approved then?
We haven't actually approved anyone
Oh,
yet. We,
all
there are probably like still questions on some of them.
Okay, all right.
And we didn't put any amount down only because we don't know what our allocation is. And that's why I said I actually am delaying putting the ad in the newspaper until March.
So last year we had like 22 get approved. Is that pretty comparable to, like, do we usually have about 54 applications? Is that like a pretty typical amount? Like, what's the acceptance rate is what I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, well, this year we actually had, let me see, 1, 2. And the 3, no, 2. Maybe 2 new applications in our public, no, 3. In our public service line item. There were probably 2 that did not get funded, I believe, last year.
Just 2?
I think it was 2 in the public service line item that may not have gotten funded. Yeah.
Wow.
And then on Monday at the public hearings, if I recall correctly, it'll likely be agency people showing up and sort of making a public pitch for what they would like to do. Am I right? And I
That's
don't know.
correct. So,
Sometimes
yes.
maybe people might speak for them too, or against, I don't know. But I don't know if I have total recall on that.
So actually, at our public hearings that are going to be on Monday, it is a needs hearing. So agencies can get up and talk for 5 minutes, give comments on why they think their their project or activity that they're doing is important and why it's needed, like in the community. So they will have that opportunity to do that as well.
So I'd gotten your email later when I was asking about the CARES stuff. So I'm seeing is the biggest reason if the name's not on this list, they just didn't ask for money. Is that generally the idea there?
Right, if their name's not, everybody's name on this list right here for CDBG requested funding.
So the agencies that aren't being funded on this, they didn't get turned down through the application process. They just didn't ask the city for money. That's the main thing here, right? All right, just checking.
Yeah, and this list doesn't include CARES Act or anything else.
No.
This is only CDBG.
And also, I didn't give you anything on the Emergency Solutions Grant. We only received probably maybe $250,000, $260,000 in that total from HUD. Of that funding, so of that funding, only 60% can go to like the emergency shelters and transitional living facilities that we fund. We have to use 32.5% for rapid rehousing, and then we're allowed to take 7.5% for admin. And that funding is actually based on actual number of beds that are used at that facility for that year. So there's a formula that we use, and so we didn't calculate that because we know it's going to change based on whatever we get.
I had a question. Because I see that we have done where we have given them money multiple times in the past, has anyone reached out to the Multicultural Center?
The
To see,
Multicultural Center?
yeah, to see why they didn't
We've given
apply?
them money, yeah,
Okay.
for years, and I'm not sure what happened.
Because I know that with 2021, a lot of people transitioned as far as jobs and,
I think the
Yeah.
person who was actually doing the program actually passed away.
oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that might be why they
Yeah.
didn't apply to it. Okay, I just wanted to know, because
Yeah.
I do see that we have
Yeah.
back to 2022 on here, so just to make sure we did our part.
Right.
Excuse me, on that housing development on the Hammermill property, has there been a clearance by the DEP on it as far as, I think everybody in the world knows that Hammermill loaded up that ground? The Hans one, the 50 units?
Oh, all right, so I believe they, didn't have to say they signed a, I believe they signed the site agreement on that one,
What does that mean? Does that mean it's clean?
that they own the property as far as I know. But I'd have to double check.
It's a major concern, really. I don't want kids growing up there for 3 years
Everything has to go through environmental.
Oh, yeah.
before they do it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
That's important.
Yeah,
The other question, we still have 2 issues here for money for Parks and Recreation with our plans for what we're doing as far as that 16th Street Park and things like that. Shouldn't we be goosing that up? This is a question for Rennie, I think. You know, shouldn't we be asking for more?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of agency requests, so,
We have a lot of kids. We have playgrounds on 2nd and Wallace and 3rd and Pennsylvania.
yeah.
13th and
I
Main.
guess we figured, we're going to use the ARP funding that we set aside, and we're going to try to leverage that with additional state and federal dollars.
Okay,
So we did
Get out
set
with that.
aside, the planning department asked for $50,000 to help with the Parks and Rec plan,
Good answer.
which is, you know, nothing, we have not historically asked for that. That's a new one, so.
Thank you.
The public facilities and sidewalks, our West Bayfront. Is there a reason why that specific area of
They put an
town?
application in, and
Okay.
so what's listed here is everyone who put an application
Right.
in.
Okay.
As we mentioned before, we're not sure if everyone who puts an application in will be funded or not. We don't know sometimes if the application that they put in, it might not be eligible. But what they're looking to do here is, I think they're looking to do sidewalks for businesses and for property owners.
So somebody like in the future on the east side of town could have a group
Yeah,
that
I'm
would
aware
propose?
of the, like some of the other places, like Central City, I know they are looking for sidewalks
Okay.
and stuff like that, so
Okay. all right.
that will be taken into consideration.
Would the organization need to be 501c3?
Yes, they do, unless it's a for-profit.
Does anybody know, and I think we're probably still waiting to find out, but with the infrastructure plan, does anybody know if sidewalks would be included on that, in that? Because that really is, I know, having been with Paul Gamble, and he said, you know, we're doing all the curb cuts, and if Jim Winarski were here, he would be asking, how many years do we have to do those curb cuts? But, you know, he pointed out that you can have curb cuts, but then you get on the sidewalk and, you know, somebody in a wheelchair would not be able to navigate. So do you know if, and I think I said that when Anna talked, I'm hoping that sidewalks can be addressed, because we know, whether we're talking about the safe routes to school, that it's so important. And we know that even though we've said it's the homeowner's responsibility, there are people who cannot afford those repairs, and other cities are looking at that. So that's kind of my sidewalk pitch, but also asking, do you know, is it too early to know if there might, if the infrastructure bill gets down to the level of including sidewalks? Do you know? Okay.
We're looking, you know, we're in constant contact with Senator Casey's office, and also our state reps, and like we have those 2 LSA applications that we're trying to go for McKinley and Pfeiffer Burley, I think it was, right? Those would address sidewalks for the safer routes to school. So we're constantly looking for funding for sidewalks.
Christian Ministries of the Apostolic Faith Church. I
Yeah.
never heard of them. Could you tell me where they are and possibly who the pastor is?
The pastor is Bishop Frankie Quinn. I believe his building's located on I want to say 8th and Liberty, but I'm not
It's
real sure.
Just
10th
looked
and
it up,
Liberty.
it's, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
former, yeah, Temple, yeah.
Is it 10th? Okay.
Mhm.
Not sure.
But I did have a question too about that. Do you think that might be off-putting to people who might think you have to be Christian to get help, or? Well, we do have a big Muslim community in Erie too. I just wondered, how do you kind of navigate that, do you know? And it is new, I think. Anybody know?
There's still additional questions that we have to ask for that activity. They are. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It does.
So, when you come to a decision, about who will get what, will it be released to the public and us at the same time, or will we know about it beforehand?
All right, so right now I'm looking to probably have the ad in the newspaper like on March 28th. But based on what our CPD rep said, emailed me today, she's saying 2 to 3 months out. Those numbers will probably be proposed. They'll probably have to be changed. That information can definitely go to you before it goes to the newspaper.
I had a question, but it was more for Renee, and it was after the fact of Liz mentioning sidewalks. Since we have a large population of ADA community members, and we have a lot of group homes and facilities, are there grants out there that we could maybe apply for to make sure that our community is more friendly for them? Could you? Because I work with individuals with, who are wheelchair bound or with intellectual disabilities, and we have a large population here. So if we can get free money, why not try to get it for the city and our community that needs it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've had some challenges in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness that code enforcement can operate under with the HUD funding. So there are, as we were talking about with applications from nonprofits, there are certain things that HUD will and won't pay for. So in terms of code enforcement, nothing above 26th Street can be paid for. So if somebody has an issue related to a house above 26th Street, it can't be reimbursed by HUD. Also, only residential issues can be reimbursed by HUD. So there are situations where we're trying to deal with industrial blight, but we can't reimburse our code enforcement officers for dealing with stuff like that. In addition, we can no longer use HUD funding to demolish homes that have been taken by eminent domain. So we have all these homes, we can't use HUD funding to demolish them. And then if we get calls, like in the summertime, we'll get a lot of calls for high grass, weeds, trash. If a code enforcement officer goes out on that call to deal with that, while they're there, they have to find something structurally deficient with the property. So they've got to look, they've got to take pictures, then they've got to go back to the office. And part of this gets back to the digital infrastructure that we're working on using the ARP funding to really improve our internal systems, because they would go out to the house, they would have to take a picture of something that's wrong with the house, then they would have to come back to the office. They have 3 or 4 different kinds of software that they use to record what they were doing, the pictures that they took, the way they have to upload it to HUD, the systems that we use here internally. And they're estimating that if we just don't take the HUD funding and get this better digital infrastructure, that they'll be able to save you know, they'll basically gain 2 code enforcement officers by not having to do all of that paperwork. So they've decided to forego the HUD funding, paying for code enforcement officers so that they can increase their efficiency and effectiveness.
That's great. You explained that to me a year ago, I think when I was a candidate and asking you questions. So I've been using that as an excuse all summer and telling all my neighbors to make sure that they find structural issues before reporting the long grass. And it's been effective for some stuff in my neighborhood. Does that mean that this is now being funded out of general funds?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just, cool.
Yeah.
History question for Ms. Smith. So several years ago, we did use ARP funding for code enforcement and actually hire and pay the salary of an additional code enforcement personnel. So has that person been absorbed into the city as the same number of people, or did we just continue to pay him and absorb him into the city and absorb him into the general fund?
You mean for CDBG, is that what you're referring to?
We use CBG
So
money
actually, this
to-
is the first year for the new budget that the code enforcement officers will not be in our budget.
Yeah,
So the answer would be yes, we absorb them into the general fund.
Oh, yes, all of them. So historically, they were all being paid through CDBG funding, and we got audited back in 2017, right before the mayor took office. We got audited because they didn't want us using HUD funding to pay for all the code enforcement officers. So since Mayor Schember took office, we've been trying to reduce our reliance on that and pay less of the code enforcement officers. And this is the first year that we've completely taken them off of the CDBG funding.
No. No, I said no, I'm sorry. You didn't
Oh,
hear me.
no, I just like, I made my own noise, like a hum.
Oh.
Like my own little.
I think that might be in a request for other pots of money. I can't confirm it, but. We most definitely can talk about how we can put our pools multiple back in service.
Is that something that, you know, because of, well, I wonder, would that be something that the Erie Community Foundation should be aware of? I mean, there's a new director at the Community Foundation, and somebody should take her over to the Booker T and show that pool with the trees growing out of it. And we know we had 2 young lives lost last year, one person who slipped into the bay, remember? And then there was a new American who fell at Wintergreen Gorge and died. And Mel, I know you've talked about this a lot. I think you even talked about how young people who were using that pool were being trained to become lifeguards. It's you know, we live on Lake Erie. You should know how to swim, and you should know how that you could get a job as a lifeguard eventually for whatever they're advertising for, $18 an hour, and they have a shortage. So I know that's a passion of yours. But is there someone who can, and maybe not just there, you've talked about other swimming programs, is there some way to get a uprising to help people spotlight that as an issue? But Mel, you talked about how young people were trained when you were there, right? They were trained to become lifeguards.
We partner with the
I mean, I personally think that it would be a benefit if our youth had access to swimming pools so they can learn how to swim, because like you said, we are on the lake, and as somebody who I didn't get, even though grew up on the Lower East Side, I didn't have access to the lake. Having a place that I knew that I could go and swim and know how to swim definitely would have given me opportunities to be a lifeguard. So I want to see Erie get a pool up, and I would love to see tournaments happening here. We have some beautiful summers. We need to get more family-friendly things here. So anything that we can do to make sure that families can spend time together is what we need to definitely do.
Michael, I know you're getting ready to jump in, but I just wanted to ask Mo, has the pool at Erie High been upgraded? Is that among the I just know the last time I was there, which was when my son was swimming in grade school, it was a long time ago, and I mean, the steps were broken, and has that ever been fixed, you know? Or?
Right now, it's not in use, but I know that it's part of construction, the construction that's taking place. It's planned in the construction, I believe, so, yeah.
It's kind of ironic that we're 2 miles or less from the lake and the bay. Every kid should
Know how to swim.
definitely. But I tell you what, back in the days when C rule was the C rule, we lost a number of athletes because they flunked pool. They didn't want to go in. Don't mention any names. The guy's dead. Give him a break. But that happened. It was tough.
It actually did. I was, not a contemporary, but I was at school, high school, when Mr. Brzezinski was teaching, and it is a fact in that we didn't learn to swim at the level and at the numbers that we should have. I wrote about this in a op-ed that I'd never released about when the Roger Young opened, and when the Roger Young opened, all the lifeguards were people of color, or the majority of them were. And so we have to look at systems. We have to look at how these systems are working, how people are being recruited, how people are being selected for these different programs. I spent, the Y runs our pool program, and I was out there several times this summer, and there was one African-American male. He was an Edinburgh student that was part of the Parks and Recreation, but there were none in the pool. And so.
I think I remember talking about this at some kind of meeting I was at, and I thought that the Erie School District was thinking about making swimming a requirement again at the middle school level, but I think that Wilson does not have a pool, is what I recall. So you couldn't do it because you don't have the facilities. So anyhow. So we can see how we can be a voice, though. I mean, even if this isn't something that we're doing, obviously there's a need that's been expressed here, and it's pretty much universal from City Council. What other questions can Deb answer?
I think the thing that's tough, though, is with inner city youth that I see is that, for example, even baseball, for example, inner city youth, if you told them to choose between baseball and basketball, it wouldn't even be close to numbers that they're just not interested in it. So swimming is not high on the interest list with a lot of inner city kids. It's basketball. And now basketball, 50 years ago, a kid might play football, basketball, baseball. Basketball is year-round now. I mean, they're playing year-round, 150 games over the summer. It's just a busy sport now, so. Yeah.
They're playing basketball instead of swimming. But I agree with you, but we're talking about saving lives. There's a big push even on the national level in funding for Black Kids Swim. It's a national crisis, Black people drowning.
I understand that, but you can't grab them by the shirt and make them swim. They have to want to do it themselves. So I understand what you're saying, but you can't make people do what they don't want to do. So they have to show interest in that. You know, I wanted my son to play
They had
baseball.
to when we were in school.
Yeah, so that's different though. That's school. If that's part of the requirement to graduate or part of your grade, then that's something you have to do. But to take a kid in the summertime and say, hey, we want you to make you swim, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with Mo, because I went swimming because my friends went swimming. And they learned how to swim, and I call it lie swimming. I was walking and moving my hands, and they were swimming. That's what I call it. So eventually, I learned how to swim. I became a lifeguard. And to your point, I could never float. Never. Can't float today. I'm like a rock. But you can't make a kid, number one, they aren't afraid to try football, basketball, baseball, but they're afraid to get in the water because they think they're going to drown. So you got to get them in there early. Infants, you can put an infant in the water, and the infant may swim right away, automatically.
They actually have those kind of programs out at Mill Creek.
So you got to start early for them to lose that fear of water, and then we can build from there.
You know, the lifeguard thing, if I can interrupt a little bit, getting that certification is great. And if you want to work at a pool here or a pool there, it's great. If you want to see some well-disciplined men and women, go down to Prescott and see what those guys do every day. They run every morning. They have a multitude of different things that they go through. It started way back when, just right in my head, the guy from Pettinato, thank you. Frank Pettinato. It's going to be a really great day.
My friend.
That was every Sunday. It was him. But he started that. Johnny Dahlstrand and North are down there now. And these guys work. I'm telling you, they work. Everybody thinks being a lifeguard is nice and having pretty girls walk up to you and give you candy and stuff. That's on cold, rainy days. When the waves are rolling, they are working. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, but it is a time-consuming thing, too.
I just want to make one last comment as far as people not using it. It's not here for people to use. We don't have access to it, so we can't expect people to actually use it or even attempt to fathom if they would or wouldn't. I think that if families had access to an affordable pool, they would use it, just from what I hear in the community. But thank you.
And I'm just going to put my Erie Seawolves Ushers hat on to let you know that the Erie Seawolves will be participating in a new initiative called Minor League Baseball had announced something called the 9. This was in February. A new Black community-focused outreach platform specifically designed to honor and celebrate the historic impact that numerous Black baseball players made on the sport, but also provide new opportunities for youth baseball and softball participation. Because I think finally baseball is recognizing that the Black players have dwindled down. We have a lot of Latino players. But anyhow, so the Seawolves will be doing something. I don't exactly know what, but and maybe you can't interest anybody in baseball, but since MLB isn't playing, maybe we can get some interest. Or they won't be playing yet.
Baseball, excuse me, I'm sorry. Baseball is tough. Last time I sat in this room as councilperson, I got a promise from Mayor Savacchio that a new baseball field would be built. And that's how she got my vote for the passive field at Bayview, because that was one of the few baseball fields we had. She did. She built one on 42nd and Old French Road. It's still up there. But we've lost fields. We lost 12th and Hess became the softball field. 18th and Downing became the softball field, and then no field at all. Baseball is tough because you have to have the equipment. I mean, I can tell you how many times I traded a basketball down at the Erie Sports Store to get a glove or a bat for the guys that were on the baseball team. That was just something we had to do.
You can turn in old mitts at the seawall, so, but I have not turned in my mitt. I still haven't learned how to catch. I still have a long ways to go. All right, any other questions, or Deb and Ron, is there anything we didn't cover that we should know about? And I don't know if I can go to both public hearings, maybe. You said it's going to be available on Zoom, so we can just listen?
Yes, after you have to register.
Okay.
I'll make sure the link, I'll send it to Lori tomorrow.
Okay.
To send to you all.
Yeah, Renee, is there anything else that we should know?
No.
Oh my God, she's gonna tell us something serious. You don't see us until like 2 Wednesdays from now, okay?
Don't forget next Wednesday for anybody who wants to go to the Civic Center.
What time?
10 o'clock?
10 o'clock?
Yeah. If you're going to be a little bit late, I'll look for you.
I checked, and I'm gonna go to my dentist appointment a little early to see if maybe they can fit me in a little early.
Oh, okay.
And they wanted me to be there 15 minutes early, but the appointment's not until 10:30. But it's just a feeling, so I'm like, hopefully she can get me in and out.
To look at the
I'll tell her I have a meeting.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I'm ready.
Okay, perfect, yeah. If not, we'll get you
Yeah.
a special showing. Sometimes one-on-one with Casey's even better, because he'd take you to all the places and show you everything. We're going to get an overview of it,
Right.
but when you get a tour of the stadium, the new locker rooms over there for the hockey and baseball, there's so much that they've done over there.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in there for the Otters game, I went there for an Otters game a couple weeks ago, and it looks completely different from when I was a kid. Like,